Welcome back to part 3 of the series I never intended to make. This is where we are trying to see if we can track down some of the vehicles that were sold by Gaydon Motor Museum back in 2003 when they cleared out nearly 70 less significant exhibits. Now in this episode we are going to see if we can track down lots 25 to 36. So let's kick into voiceover mode and see what we can find out.
Right, first up, we have got lot 25, which was a 1952 MG YB saloon. This went for $4,830 at the Gaydon auction. It'd been off the road a little while, but seemed to be all up and together. And post-auction, the first thing I came across was in the Classic Y magazine, and it mentioned that they believed it had actually been purchased by MG Rover. But we forward a few years to the late noughties, it appeared at a Brightwell's auction, and they actually mentioned it had been purchased by John Edwards, who was one of the Phoenix 4 that purchased Rover from BMW. And this time it went through the auction for £4,000 at the Hammer. So then it goes a little bit quiet on me, but the good news is we check on DVLA, it is still taxed, so it is up, running and still about. So that one is definitely still alive. Lot 26 was a 1936 Austin Light 12.6. Now this at the auction went for $10,925. It had been previously fully restored by the museum, but it hadn't been used for a few years. And this car had a little bit of TV heritage, that it's been used in a series called The Silver Chair, which was one of the Narnia books. Now, if we go and look at DVLA, last time it was taxed was back in 2005, and if we scroll down on the page we discover that car sadly has been exported. So as we know, when they leave the country we struggle to track them down, so if you know where it is, it'd be great to hear from you. Lot 26A was a 1935 Austin 10 horsepower Litchfield saloon. Now this sold at the auction for $3,680. Now as you can see in the catalogue, it didn't have a picture, so I found one for you, but this is not the actual car that was for sale, because the car for sale did actually need some work. Now the good news is, when we look on DVLA, it is taxed currently, so it's up and on the road, but this one has beaten me. I cannot find anything on it. Under that registration number, BRB 530, it's completely off-grid for me, so again, if you know where it is, give us a shout. Lot 27 was a Rover 418 SI Tourer. Now this was the last off the line. It had only done 4 miles and it sold for £7,935 at the Gaydon auction. Now we check up on its current situation. It is taxed and it is MOT, so it's very much a live one this. But a little bit interesting on this, that it only had 4 miles at the auction, and in 2018 when it went for its first MOT it only had 7, so it was parked up in the intervening period, and it's only done a few thousand miles since. It's still only on 16,500 miles at the last MOT, and this car itself does actually get a mention as the last of the line in the James Taylor R8 book. Lot 28 was a 1922 standard 14 horsepower. Now this sold for $7,475 at the auction. It looked like it had been parked up for a little bit because it hadn't had an MOT for nearly 30 years. But interestingly, we go over to DVLA, and something here I've never seen before. It says it's not taxed for on-road use. So I've got no idea what that means. I haven't seen that before. But the interesting thing at the bottom of the page is the export marker says yes. So I'm afraid this one has left the country, so lost track of that one, I'm afraid. Lot 29 was a 94 Rover Mini 35 limited edition. This sold at the auction for £7,590. It's only done 6,400 miles. It was actually a press car. Now, interestingly, post-auction, 6 years later, it eventually had its first MOT on the computer system, and that showed it had done 7,200 miles, so it hadn't really done much. And if we look at the current DVLA record, it's showing that expired MOT and that it's marked off the road. But interestingly, it's had a logbook issued in 2017, so that suggests a possible change of ownership. But also, I did find it on the Classic Car Auctions website for their March 2023 auction, where it was up for sale but guided at 15 to 18,000. So being marked not sold, I'm assuming it didn't achieve the amount of money that the seller was after. So that one is still about, but I think looking for a new owner. Lot 30 was a 1980 Triumph TR8 Roadster, and it was original factory built right hand drive, so quite a rare car that. And that sold for £11,040 at the Gaydon auction. Now, having a look at DVLA, it is showing it's still taxed. On the MOT side of it, it was MOT between 2006 and 2015. It then seemed to come off the road for a bit, but it had one in 2019, but of course after that it is very much exempt. And I have found a picture of it quite recently on Steve Knight's Flickr page, who I think has helped us out before. And that was a picture taken in July 2023, and the car's looking in pretty good shape there, so that one's definitely alive and well. Lot 31 was an 88 Land Rover 100, and this sold for £9,200 at the auction. Now this was developed for the Swiss and Dutch armies, and it had a 3.5 litre V8 catalytic quick petrol engine, so even Greta Thunberg would go to war in that one. Now, I haven't been able to find a lot on the internet on this one. DVLA tell us that the MOT expired sort of 18 months ago and it's marked as sawners off the road. But prior to that, looking at the MOT records, it was MOT between 2006 and 2021. And in that time, it had only done 11,000 kilometres. So it certainly hasn't been used hard. So, but apart from that, can't find much on that one, but definitely seems to still be alive. Lot 32 was a 93 Land Rover Discovery which had been sectioned, and this sold for what I think is a quite mighty £5,980. Now, tracking this down was a bit of a challenge, but on the AutoShite website there was a post by Dolly Wobbler, who's also Hubnut YouTuber, in 2014 saying it was at Rimmer Brothers, and here we go. Look at that, it's not the greatest picture, but it is in their reception at their showroom, so that one's well alive. Lot 33 was a 71 Austin 1800 hearse. Now this sold for £1,495 at the auction. Now this was needing a little bit of work, but it's gone very quiet post auction. It hadn't been taxed since December 90, and the last logbook was issued in January 2004, just sort of 6 or 7 months after the Gaydon auction. So I can't find anything on that. I've got a horrible feeling that might have fallen foul of the Banger Boys, but who knows. Lot 34 was a 94 Rover 214 that had been sectioned for display at shows. That sold for £598. Now a little bit of digging on the AutoShite website back in 2014. Rob T posted that he'd seen this car a couple of years before on an Owners Club stand, so there is a possibility that one is still about. Lot 35 was a 73 Triumph 2000 with a V8 engine. Now this was a prototype car and it sold for £3,450. Now it was a non-runner, it was missing the glass, but apart from that it appeared sort of all up and together, and it had last been on the road in 1980. Now a quick dive onto DVLA shows this car is currently taxed, so it's very much alive. And having a look at its MOT history, it appears it's been brought back to life probably around about 2016, because there's no MOT records for it prior to that. And interestingly, when the MOT in 2019 happened, it must have been in Northern Ireland. Now, interestingly, as we crack on, I found on the AR Online site, which is a great website, that under an article about the Triumph 2000, a chap called Ian Hull had mentioned that he actually owned this car, saying that sort of basically under the bodywork it's all pure stag, and he's having a great time driving it. That one is very much alive and well and in Northern Ireland. Now our last car of this episode is Lot 36, and this is a first off the line. This was a 95 Rover 416. It had just 50 miles on the clock and it sold for £5,290. Now, quick dive onto DVLA and we can see this car is MOT'd but is in fact sawn, so it's off the road at the moment, and the last logbook was issued in 2019. Now with a little bit of research I have found that is probably its last change of ownership, because I found this listing on a Brightwell's auction of the car, and it went through them back in, I believe, 2019 for 3,300. Now, the interesting thing is, after that, the mileage seems to have jumped up. Between 2007 and 2019, when it sold, it went from 4,200 to 6,900 miles. But by March 23, it's now up to 20,000. So somebody is now really getting some use out of that car. Now, I really hope you've enjoyed looking through those lots with me. And please make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get a notification next time of when we bring out the next episode.